Hello and welcome to another episode of Weltengeist. How do people in my world conceptualize the soul? A question that Lichen, Crow and I ask ourselves as part of our world building collaboration. So check their videos as well, they are linked in the video description down below. As you may guess from the name of my channel and the title of this episode, we will be covering one of the most important topics in my world, the concept of a Weltengeist and what it really is. In the setting I'm creating, you can imagine a planet like an isolated system, or to phrase it better, a plant pod. And when this plant pod, the planet, is in the habitable zone, meaning an area with the right conditions for life to grow, it could be the case that this world will be targeted by a seed of life, and these seeds are sent by beings we will get to know later in this video, and they are the reason why you will find the trace of Weltengeist on those planets, as we do on the Raja. The so-called Weltengeist can be translated to spirit of the world or world spirit and describes not only the universal life force of a planet but also the life force that flows through all the beings that live on it. For example, when a creature dies, its life force, meaning the Weltengeist, returns to Raja, the planet we are talking about. And so the Weltengeist behaves like energy and always remains constant and naturally never leaves a planet. While creatures always have a Weltengeist as long as they are alive, the Weltengeist stays in a creature's body after death only for a while before returning to the overall cycle again. And when the meat of an animal is cooked, the Weltengeist gets trapped longer within the meat, which is equal to the biological period of preservability of meat and food in general. And the same concepts can be applied to plants as well. You have to know that every act of living burns a certain level of Weltengeist within the living being, and so it has to be refilled. You can regenerate your Weltengeist if you consume animals and plants that are still having parts of Weltengeist within them, if they are correctly preserved, freshly harvested or hunted. But it is to mention that each creature has a different concentration or level of Weltengeist. Simple organic life forms like plants or insects have a lower concentration, while more intelligent beings like animals have a stronger one, and sentient beings like humans are known to have the strongest concentration. Now you might wonder how to measure the concentration or level of Weltengeist. And let me say that the scholars of Nevoria suspect that higher thinking, like the ability to visualize objects, thinking with an inner voice, or even understanding the concept of time, is an indication of the so-called focus, which is a term that describes the level of Weltengeist within a living being. For example, an insect will fly around aimlessly, only following basic instincts like hunger and reproduction, which is an indication of a low level of focus, meaning a low level of Weltengeist. Yet a complex being with a higher consciousness, like a human, would have a higher focus because they can make a conscious decision instead of only following their basic instincts. So the higher your focus, meaning your level of Weltengeist, the better you are at visualizing and understanding complex and abstract concepts and thoughts. Another example shows this pretty clearly, as humans can understand time to some degree but only experience it in one direction. But if we would inspect very powerful beings like Avenal, Tanut or Raja, who are considered gods in this world, then they would have a better understanding of time, and maybe they would be able to peek into the future or do even other things that humans cannot even imagine. You will see, the power system in this world is scalable and applies to everyone in this universe, not only on this planet or on this world, but more on this when we talk about the magic system and how to use the Weltengeist. Some people believe that one's Weltengeist is equivalent to the individual consciousness and basically the soul of an individual. But contrary to these beliefs, you have to know that if a being dies, the Weltengeist doesn't stay intact, and so the individual cannot keep the consciousness and experience of past lives. That means that when the individual Weltengeist of a person returns to a Raja, with all the consciousness, memories and experiences they made during a lifetime, their Weltengeist will be shattered by a Raja and she will send it back as pieces to different newborn creatures universe that will have parts of the former Weltengeist within them. So if you die, one part of you could become a flower, another one become part of another human or an animal, and so on. Yet there are some anomalies where the Weltengeist will find its original pieces in the void between death and life, and some pieces will be recollected by this individual or by this god. If you're wondering why Raja has this kind of power over the Weltengeist, well, then let me tell you that Raja herself is the manifestation of the collective universal life force, or better said, the subliminal consciousness of all living things on this planet. That is why the planet and the goddess share the same name, by the way. A being like Raja, meaning a living and thinking planet, is called Weltengeist as well. The Weltengeist beings are a race of cosmic entities that spread life among the universe to reproduce. If you remember, in the beginning of this episode I told you that these beings are responsible for sending seeds of life to chosen planets. And when the creations of a planet become more and more intelligent and more sentient and also develop a certain level of understanding, Raja will evolve into a full-grown Weltengeist and will leave the planet to find another one and repeat the cycle. Phew. I hope you're still with me, but congratulations, now you know the basics and fundamentals of the Weltengeist. So let's talk about even more advanced and complex things that come with it, because you have to understand that the Weltengeist is the life force of the planet, but it is also used as a power source for the magic in this world, the so-called arts of kinetics. Further details on how it works will be covered in another episode about the magic on the Raja, but let me tell you that there are different forms of magic which all use the Weltengeist as a power source. It always comes down to increase the focus, meaning the level of Weltengeist to be able to perform the arts of kinetics. The most popular forms of kinetics are the inner kinetics, which are used by the northern nomadic Renan kingdoms, and the outer kinetics, which is mostly used by the Nevurians. The main difference between these two systems is where the concentrated Weltengeist will manifest its power. The inner kinetics, for example, use the higher focus to focus on the inside and manipulate the kinetic user itself by enhancing the natural abilities superior to a normal human, as they get like supernatural strength, speed, reflexes, or even an impenetrable skin. The outer kinetics uses the increased focus to do the exact opposite, as they use it to manipulate everything outside of the kinetic user. They are manipulating external matter, which allows them to make objects float, control them, and even throw them at enemies. You can imagine this as a limited form of telekinesis. So why aren't the Nevurians ripping everyone's heart out, you may ask? Well, there are certain rules and limitations in regards to the use of the Weltengeist and its manipulation that we will cover in the episode about the magic system of kinetics in detail. But let me tell you, there's a third form of kinetics as well, as even more advanced and mysterious techniques that play with the physical boundaries of the universe, and even beings like the Weltengeist that can be considered as gods use the arts of kinetics and are bound to its laws. Yet this use of kinetics is beyond nearly everyone's understanding. You already know a bit about Weltengeist, and since every act of living costs a certain amount of Weltengeist, it can be also felt like hunger or thirst, but it feels more like a headache. And this is also the reason why different beliefs and cults exist surrounding the existence of the Weltengeist. One of the most dangerous cults is the Kanui, which means the group of Deathbringer in Nevuri language. These extreme individuals will even go as far as to eat the corpses of their sacrifices, believing that this will yield them even more power, as the Weltengeist of the victims will become part of theirs. Another cult, which is unknown to the public though, is the Sixth Pillar. These people sacrifice other sentient beings with the help of complicated and occult rituals to absorb the Weltengeist in hopes to become even stronger. Strong kinetic users are especially sought after, as they are having a high focus, meaning a higher level of Weltengeist to absorb. But as opposed to the Kanui cult, the sixth pillar knows what they are doing. By adding the full Weltengeist of another human to their own, they double the focus of what a human could reach individually, something that shouldn't be allowed by nature. With these powers, they are extremely dangerous and hide in the shadows, sponsored by the Nevorian elite and building a shadow government behind the Certans. As you probably noticed already, we are getting really deep into the lore here and would have to cover other topics here and there as well to give you the full picture. And we will go there, but not today, as we have to talk about other things first, like the magic system, the social structure of Nevoria, the Mozzie people, what Tanud and Avnal really are, because they are not Weltengeist beings like Raja. But I can guarantee you that there will be more episodes about all of these. Just let me know which topics you find are the most interesting ones and which we should cover next. Thanks to Lichen and Crow for this collaboration, and make sure to check out their channels as well. Also, a huge thanks to Angel Israel, who helps me with writing the scripts for every video, and obviously a huge thank you to my artist Alcedors, who once again did an amazing job. So see you in the next episode of Weltengeist, and I wish you a good day or good evening or good morning whenever you will watch this video.